With over $80 billion a year in psychiatric drug money at stake, it is impossible to escape the saturation of psychiatric disease-mongering in today's society. But behind the marketing lurks a secret psychiatry's customers would be shocked to learn. How are these drugs tested? And are they safe?
No one knows precisely how these psychiatric medications act.
We don't know if I give you a medication if it is going to work or not.
There's not a great deal of scientific support for using them.
I myself, I try to pick a drug whose side effects might be useful.
You have to choose what is the best option.
We don't have sure methods.
There are no rules. Everything it's an art, really.
Often it's trial and error.
It's a kind of a trial and error.
It's trial and error.
Some degree of trial and error, I guess.
A blind man's bluff or something like that.
You never know if it's the right drug.
It's a much more complex subject.
There's always going to be huge surprises, and that's what makes it so difficult. The best psychiatrists in the world will mess up all the time.
The American public is being treated as a mass medical experiment. We are all being treated like guinea pigs by the pharmaceutical companies, the psychiatric industry, and the FDA.
They are basically testing drugs on large parts of the population without really knowing what the results are going to be.
It's a very dire situation that we're facing. We're talking about people's health and in many situations, people's lives. These are very serious issues.
As dangerous chemical compounds, psychotropic drugs are tightly regulated by governments throughout the world. And for any new psychotropic drug to be approved for use, it must undergo tests intended to protect the public.
When a pharmaceutical company develops a new drug that they want to send to the market, what they do is they have to run it through clinical trials. They have to be able to provide to the FDA safety data to say this is a safe and effective drug.
In clinical trials, psychiatrists are engaged to do the research. And we could bank on the fact that these psychiatrists are tied to the pharmaceutical companies.
And the psychiatrist puts their name on there, they're seen as an expert. Talking mental drugs, who writes them? It's psychiatrists. So that's how it works. It's a terrible system.
The desperate thing about it is that it's all dressed up in the name of science. It's not science at all, it's pure marketing. But they get away with it because it's called science.
There's really no test, no X-ray, there's no chemistry that shows you have this condition. It's really just the opinion of someone who is probably taking money from pharmaceutical companies to prescribe drugs to people.
Where's the biochemistry? Where's the research? Where's the substantiation? And the answer is it vaporizes like mist in the morning. It's not there.
But the lack of scientific testing doesn't stop psychiatrists from carrying out clinical trials on dangerous drugs. Clinical trials are supposed to consist of 4 phases of precise scientific drug testing, the first 3 of which must be submitted to governments for regulatory approval. In Phase 1, the drug is checked for toxicity. In Phase 2, tests are done to see how the drug reacts in the human body. If it clears this hurdle, then a Phase 3 trial is carried out. But with no lab tests verifying or measuring any mental disorder, and with big money at stake, psychiatric drug research is highly subjective and rife with manipulation.
There are many, many, many places where you can tweak the study just a little bit with the study design or with the way you gather the data or the way the data are reported. And there's so many different ways you could bias a study.
I've seen what they did to the data in these trials. There's no question that they manipulated the data.
For example, let's say they had 100 people to start with. 40% drop out. 30% have a positive response, 30% have no response. They then say that they have a 50% response rate, when in fact, most of us would say it's a 30% response rate because only 30 out of the original 100 really responded. And so you can see that that's a little bit of a manipulation of the research data.
When they design drug studies, they're only looking at the one thing they want to see. And they don't report all the other things that are happening.
Case in point, the antidepressant Cymbalta.
Lilly, I believe, in February of 2004, did a clinical trial study. The people in this clinical trial did not have symptoms of depression. And in that clinical trial, there were 11 attempted suicides and 4 suicides completed. One of which was Tracy Johnson, 19-year-old college girl. She did not have any symptoms of depression, and yet this drug pushed her to commit suicide by hanging herself.
That shoots the theory down that they say that, people get suicidal because of the, underlying illness that people kill themselves, that these weren't suicidal people to begin with. These weren't depressed at all. These were healthy people.
A slew of media coverage followed, but psychiatrists on the FDA Drug Evaluation Panel chose to ignore the death and went on to approve Cymbalta the following August.
One of the reasons why we have underestimated the potential of some psychiatric antidepressant drugs to actually trigger a suicidal kind of behavior in people is because the people who designed the research study didn't include in the research questionnaire this suicidal behavior. And then you can report that we had 0 incidents of this type of behavior among our subjects.
And then the response is trumpeted as if there's something magical about it, when in fact what's happened is a whole statistical tap dance routine that violates good science. However, on the basis of that kind of phony trial, the drug can be marketed.
Keep in mind that when a drug is tested in the clinical trials, it's only a very short period of time. The final phase of testing can be anywhere from 5 to 6 weeks.
The longest of those studies was 8 weeks. The shortest was 4 weeks. So these are not long-term studies. I think most physicians and most people taking the drugs assume they're long-term, 1 year, 2 years, 3 year studies. They're not. They're very, very short studies.
I find it pretty outrageous that we can base a multi-billion-dollar industry on a few 6 or 8 week clinical trials where antidepressant medications beat a sugar pill by a few percentage points.
It is on the basis of biased research such as this that psychotropics with potentially fatal side effects are routinely approved by FDA panels for a lifetime of use. And how can this happen? Because drugs are big money, and FDA panels are dominated by those who benefit by approving them.
The FDA panels that evaluate these drugs are largely psychiatrists. All of a sudden you discover there are 20 different pharmaceutical companies paying them, either grants or honoraria or some other way. They're getting paid by the pharmaceutical industry.
If you have a psychiatrist who works at the FDA, he could also be being paid by industry. He might sit on industry panels or discussions or get paid to be a speaker. What I found in working with physicians at the FDA was that they could have dual positions. They could sit on an industry board. They could be influenced by industry.
If you've got 10 FDA scientists or 10 committee members, it's just a matter of 6 saying yes, the drug is safe, 4 saying no. And in almost every single case, those 6 saying that the drug is safe and effective always have pharmaceutical ties. They're getting paid, they're getting funded somehow or another.
Have you been diagnosed with depression and struggle with sadness, trouble sleeping, anxiety, or low energy? Ask your doctor about Effexor XR.
With Phase 3 approval a foregone conclusion, the marketing blitz begins. But while psychiatrists have already begun promoting and prescribing these drugs throughout the world, there's one more phase yet to be carried out. Phase 4.
What Phase 4 clinical trials are is when they've actually gotten the drug approved and then they get it into the general population, so that we finally find out what it does when it hits ethnic populations, women, children.
Then we see who dies, who has seizures, who has deformed children, who has epilepsy, who has diseases downstream, whose heart stops.
The public is the clinical trial. That's where we find out the problems with these drugs.
This is an experimental stage, and it's so much so that one consumer protection group has advised patients that they refuse a prescription for any drug that hasn't already been on the market for 7 years.
So if you're taking a drug that's only been out for a year or 2 or 3, you are a guinea pig.
And the experimentation doesn't end here. Additional psychiatric drug trials take advantage of the invented disorders in psychiatry's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual to rake in even more profits by targeting the most innocent of all.
What's up, y'all? This is Music, and this is Disaster Strikes. Go get it. In stores now. Support, all right?
The triumph. This right here, this is the triumph. This symbolizes all the hard work that we done went through, building this empire. Disaster area music, and every artist on the label. Let the world know, y'all ain't seen nothing yet. Triumph. Meet the bear whoop of hip-hop. My quest don't stop, standing on your skeleton skulls, that's my backdrop. Lightning flashing, ocean waves crashing, I'm harassing with a tongue lashing for all your trespassing. You're getting shot up for saying my name in passing. Body snatch, there'll be no casket. Head buried, body parts wrapped in plastic. Fingers spreaded over 4 freeways in traffic. It's a shame, your death is my classic. You get the point, I'm being sarcastic. Family asking what happened to getting your ass kicked. I've seen stranger days than Angela Bassett. Bury the hatchet in your back quick, disaster's brain sick. Every thought hand-picked. But you're not doomed though, cause Jesus healed the sick. But you need to stop reading tarot cards from Dionne Warwick. The triumph, 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 triumph. This is the triumph, 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 disaster, triumph, triumph, the triumph, the triumph, disaster, the triumph. Boldly I stroll through the valley of death, exterminating demons, leave them gasping for breath. Beat chewing on your brain like a cannibal chef. You're discombobulated, not knowing your right from left. Hollow points fly relentlessly through your vest, exploding on contact, destroying your chest like Calgon, taking you away, relieving your stress. You never pictured just die with this much finesse. You're fatigued and feeling my full court press, and sweating up them spirits that got you possessed. Nevertheless, this line rumble like an alpine, ripping through your waistline, getting stuck in your spine. You never walk again. If you smart, you never talk again, or wear that mohawk again. Grown men walking around looking 10, wearing Vans and tight pants. Our youth don't have a chance. The triumph, the triumph, 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 triumph. This is the triumph, the triumph, 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 disaster, disaster, triumph, triumph, the triumph, the triumph, disaster, disaster, the triumph, the triumph, 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 disaster, triumph. This is the triumph. This is the triumph. The triumph. Triumph. Disaster. Triumph. 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 Disaster. Disaster. The triumph. The triumph. Disaster. The triumph. Triumph. I got your head held high in the palm of my fist. You clashed with a titan, got more than a norm twist. Torso can't be identified, burnt to a crisp. Battling disaster, suicide, you crossed off the list. But you wanted to get a rep, despite of the risk. Feeling the paralyzed sting of a black widow's death kiss. You're twitching as your strongest nerve resists. Eyes roll in the back of your head, your soul's dismissed. Maggots consume you and proceed to eat their way out. The corner earling from the way I left you laid out. Any memories of you quickly fade out. Them skinny jeans and all white glasses is played out. Disaster, removing any doubt. A spectator sizing me up, thinking they gon' take me out. I strike first like lightning from thunderclouds and kill my enemies simply by praying out loud.
If they test their drugs on children. Then they get a 6-month extension on their exclusivity period or patent period.
This psychiatric drug research center in Texas uses advertisements to lure in child volunteers. And once inside, they're further enticed with the simplest of tricks.
This is where they're going to be playing. We have Game Boys, we have Xbox, we have 5 TVs.
They come in here and they help themselves to crackers, cookies, free candy, free crackers.
Everything is paid for. You don't pay for anything.
But these perks are just bait to coax children into ingesting powerful psychiatric drugs known to cause suicide and violence in their own age group.
These are drugs that would cost maybe several $100s a month in a pharmacy. They actually are getting them free in research.
We love children, and we just love children because they're our future.
By conducting those tests on children, they get a financial incentive that's worth over $1 billion. Those are the facts. You make of them what you will.
With this kind of money at stake, psychotropic drug experimentation on children is rampant, with 323 studies either completed or in the works, including a 2003 trial that tested children on an antidepressant treating premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Those drugs, which are barely more effective than placebos, often have huge side effects, which are dangerous and even deadly to people.
Families don't know the risk. If they actually were aware of the risk and believed it, no one would take that risk.
The psychiatrist would never, she didn't say one word to me about what was going to be the effects of the drugs.
No side effects listed, no. Well, let's sit down, we have to talk about this. At that point in time, he said, well, this doesn't have that type of reaction on any children, you know, that it's very safe.
If he had told me then what I know now about it, I never would have taken it.
She said, oh, Beth must have been on Paxil. That's the only way she would kill herself. And I said, well, what is this? How do people know this? I didn't know anybody would know something like that. And we went on the internet, and all of a sudden you find out this it's not uncommon. But it's not uncommon for people to become psychotic on these drugs.
We're entitled to know the truth before we give a mind-altering drug to our children, our wife, our mother, our father, ourselves.
We don't really know what they're doing. That's what scares me. It's all made up theory. There are no facts about what these drugs really do. And if someone said, well, we don't know what this is going to do to you, good or bad, would you take that medication?
Now that is not the practice of medicine. That's the practice of marketing. And this practice of marketing is taking lives. And the poor patient doesn't even know it.
But in the testing and marketing of psychotropic drugs, money trumps safety. The top 10 most prescribed psychotropic drugs gross over $26.5 billion annually, more than double the amount of new money put into circulation every year by the United States Mint. But to make this kind of money, psychiatrists first have to convince the most crucial market segment of all, those with the power of prescription.
Psychiatrists specifically, they're just kind of working as sales agents for the pharmaceutical companies.
There's nothing like another doctor touting the benefits of your drug to drive market share.
They're an extended part of the marketing arm of these companies.
Medications play a primary role.
We give drugs.
Medication is a must.
There's a lot of new medications.
There are medications available for treating GAD.
Medications to use for PTSD.
Antipsychotic medications.
Atypical antipsychotics.
Benzodiazepines.
Stimulants.
Antidepressant medications.
MAOIs.
Amphetamines. Anticonvulsant medications.
Once the medications have been balanced out,
then we move on to a combination of 3 medicines.
There's no absolute limit that is set for the number of medications.
There are so many choices.
Apparently, we're willing to try almost anything.
Psychiatric drugs can't be sold without a prescription, so pharmaceutical companies hire psychiatrists to promote psychiatric drugs to their fellow prescribers. The money trail starts at the world's most prestigious medical schools, in the offices of highly influential university-based or academic psychiatrists. With their seal of approval, pharmaceutical companies make billions on psychotropic drugs.
There are a lot of academic psychiatrists especially who have ties to 10 or 15 or 20 different pharmaceutical companies, and so they're making a very large amount of money.
Whether they're professors or whether they work at big medical institutions, those drug companies will make sure that they've got them on the payroll somehow.
They'll have this person feed this information to their other peers, but it's all being motivated through monies being funded by pharmaceutical companies.
About 40% of the early stage marketing dollars for pharmaceutical companies go straight to these thought leaders, psychiatrists.
These financial arrangements with so-called key opinion leaders are very lucrative. A top academic psychiatrist can personally rake in over $500,000 per year from pharmaceutical companies.
These people are still considered the stars of their medical centers because they bring in all this great money from the pharmaceutical companies, and that helps keep the coffers of the medical center full.
Universities receive a lot of money from the pharmaceutical industry. Drug companies are building buildings right next to the medical school. They're funding research right and left.
The University of Michigan Depression Center received, I think it was $750,000 from Eli Lilly, and all they do down there is crank out this biological view of psychiatry and mental illness and depression.
With academic psychiatrists collecting millions in drug money for their universities, it is no surprise that school curricula focus on psychotropic drugs.
Training programs in psychiatry, the majority of them now are drugs first. You're really a psychopharmacologist in a way when you come out of a psych residency training program.
Even when I went to medical school, psychiatrists did talk to patients. Now all they do is write a prescription and send them away.
A psychiatrist is trained for one purpose, to administer psychiatric drugs.
Academic psychiatrists don't just indoctrinate future prescribers. They also heavily promote these drugs to their peers. First, by creating clinical trial studies, passed off as unbiased research that push both an invented psychiatric disorder and the drug to manage it. These studies are planted in professional journals to be read by their colleagues and quoted in the media. But what readers don't know is that an estimated 50% of the time, these psychiatrists never took part in the studies.
One of the most unethical practices we're aware of is ghostwriting of journal articles, where somebody at the pharmaceutical company will write the paper and the academic physician will put his name on it and get it published in a major journal when he maybe changed 3 or 4 words in the whole article, and the article was basically written as a marketing tool by the drug company, and yet this academic puts his name on it as if he's the author.
He has had no part in the study, and also he probably hasn't even read the study results, but he is prepared to receive $10,000, $20,000 to put his name at the front of the research, which gives it added authority.
Ghostwriting is so common that even the psychiatrist running the FDA department evaluating psychiatric drug safety has attached his name to ghostwritten articles.
The average physician picks that up and reads it. He believes it. And it's not a mystery that he would believe it. It seems reasonable that it's in black and white, it's in a good journal, it's in the New England Journal of Medicine, it must be true.
These journals are often sent free to psychiatrists and doctors under the guise of legitimate medical research. And why are they free? Because pharmaceutical drug ads reap huge revenues for their publishers.
So if you go through a medical journal, you'll see page after page of advertising for bipolar disorder and treatment of using medications, or advertisings for depression and treatment of using medications, schizophrenia. So it's really everywhere.
I remember just a couple of years ago, the first time I opened the journal from the American Psychological Association called the APA Monitor, and there was a multi-page ad, high gloss, very expensive, for Concerta, which is time-release Ritalin. I resigned from the American Psychological Association. I wasn't going to be part of this whatsoever.
It's very hard when your major source of income is advertising and advertising placement to write an article that's negative about a particular drug and expect that company to continue to buy ads in your medical journal. So that's a major issue.
But psychiatric key opinion leaders aren't satisfied with filling medical journals with ghost-written articles. They also spread the gospel of psychotropic drugs at conferences in continuing medical education, or CME.
Physicians and nurse practitioners and physicians assistants are mandated to take a certain amount of continuing education credits every year. Well, 70% of all continuing medical education is now funded by the pharmaceutical industry.
That seminar is going to be taught by a professional who is employed by the pharmaceutical company. The very nature of where someone is giving you your support means you are biased to that person's side.
Many physicians and many psychiatrists who attend medical conferences don't know that when they go to that conference meeting that's about antidepressants, antipsychotics, and it's generally an academic psychiatrist who's speaking, they don't realize that person's probably making about $10,000 for that 1-hour speech.
But you don't have to be an academic psychiatrist to get a piece of the pie. Psychiatrists who heavily prescribe psychotropic drugs are generously rewarded by pharmaceutical sales representatives for drumming up local business.
Psychiatrists, especially high prescribers, are targeted and gifted extensively by the industry. Now that gifting is where you need to get specific.
That was not unusual during our marketing conversations to say, well, what's our top drug writer? You know, who's the doctor that's prescribing the most of this drug? Well, you know, let's send them to the Kentucky Derby.
We offered trips on some occasions to come out and hear a 2-hour talk, but it happened to be on a nice island in Hawaii.
There were a lot of things that we did day in and day out to try to get the doctors to write our drugs, or in my case, to write for the psychiatric drugs. We did a lot of lunches and dinners, and we brought in speakers, and those speakers were obviously paid by us, and we would wave, you know, renowned studies at them from renowned journals. But of course, we would never say that these studies were paid for by our company, and that it was written by a ghostwriter who was paid by our company, or that our company tends to do a ton of advertising within that particular medical journal. We would never say that.
With over 300 million psychiatric drug prescriptions written every year, high prescribing psychiatrists are richly rewarded for opening up new markets. They receive up to 25% more pharmaceutical money than any other medical specialty, an average in one state of more than $45,000 per top psychiatrist per year.
Psychiatrists get more kickback from the pharmaceutical companies than any other branch of medicine.
The profession of psychiatry couldn't keep its journals afloat, couldn't keep its conferences afloat, couldn't keep its organizations afloat without money from drug companies. The drug companies really have psychiatry in their pocket.
This is a profession whose diagnoses have been heavily influenced by people who are heavily influenced by the pharmaceutical industry, and whose treatments are almost exclusively these days pharmaceuticals. We should be able to count on them. I do not believe that we can.
Due to the ceaseless promotion by psychiatrists, psychotropic drug prescription has permeated not just psychiatry, but the entire medical profession. But this promotional campaign has a second prong that lines the pockets of psychiatrists more than any other. And this one directly targets you.
Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Bush and this is Disaster Area. There's something about the cocktail. Whether the place you can stop, cause your race and the broken tail like result the guns in your face. And police brutality's a black man's reality, and fatalities is a small technicality. Get transferred while a mother's life blurred, like they shoot for the news, every single word slurred. I'm fed up, trying to keep my head up and spark the mind of these soldiers. It's blue and red up. We need to stop these trigger-happy cops from killing us. Civilians stop buying from their shops, make inflation drop. We control all the money. I know it sounds funny in this land of milk and honey, But racial profiling is common as freestyling. And backstabbing smiling, life is in the pen violent. They say I never had a chance, I blame my pops. I'm not paranoid, it's just something about the cops.
I don't like no, I don't trust them, I must duck them.
It's something about the cops.
I don't like no, I don't trust them, I must duck them.
It's something about the cops.
I don't like no, I don't trust them, I must duck them.
It's something about the cops. Police brutality is at an all-time high while the economy's at an all-time low.
It's hard in the streets, I need some money. It's hard in the streets, gotta do what I gotta do. Gon' do me and my kids. We need clothing, we gotta make it in this world.
Gotta get this paper. Police brutality is at an all-time high while the economy's at an all-time low. It appears that the new slogan on the street is, gotta get that paper, player, gotta get that paper, player, gotta get that paper, player, gotta get that paper. Some niggas that fake it, gots to get bucked. I can see it in them, I can feel it in them, I can sense it in them, I can tell them niggas hating, I can see it in them, I can feel it in them, I can sense it in them, I can tell them these busters claim that they got the power but get devoured in the first run and hit the showers. Get it straight and you're looking out of cocked eyes, the delivery itself. Dare Disaster album on sale now.